Hi, I'm Jeremy, and today I'm going to show you the 11th game in my Spiel des Jahres Winners series, and this is the 1990 winner of the German Game of the Year award, Hoity Toity, which is designed by Klaus Teuber. And this game, it goes by several names, by hook or by crook, I know it's also known as, or I believe fair means or foul. This is a game, it's basically a simultaneous action selection game where players are going to be determining or controlling a group of antique collectors who aren't above stealing their antiques, trying to collect the sets of antiques that they need to put on the best displays. So players are going to be simultaneously selecting actions. It's going to be a 3 to 6 player games played over a number of rounds. It runs usually about 30 to 45 minutes, and essentially it involves a lot of second guessing what your opponent's intentions are going to be. I'll take a moment to show you how the game plays, and then I'll come back here and give you my thoughts on it. Okay, so this is about what a 4-player game of Hoity Toity would look like. And each player at the start of the game is going to get 4 of these antique cards. The notable thing on these cards is going to really be the letter, which is indicated in the top left corner. Essentially, you want to collect runs of these cards. So for example, A, B, C, D would be fine, but if you had multiple of the same letter, that would also extend your run. So you could have A, B, 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 C, and that would still be a run of 5 cards. And then in a tiebreaker situation, the age of the item, the older being better, would come into play. But those are each player's gonna get 4 of those at the start of the game. And then each player is also going to get a set of 2 wear cards, which are labeled on the back with 1s, and then a number, I believe it's 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 of these what cards, which will determine the actions you do at a given location, and they'll have number 2 on the back. So this game is essentially a game in which players are going to get each of them again a pawn that corresponds to the color of their cards. That begins here in this Antique Collectors Club. And then you'll notice there's a track running around this board, and on this track we have various auction houses or castles depicted where players are going to be able to go to buy antiques. There's a prison here, I'll explain that in a minute, and then at the end there's a dinner where after collecting a bunch of antiques the players will go to celebrate. At the game end will trigger when one of the pawns moves to this space at least, and then there'll be a final scoring of players' antiques that they've collected, and then whichever player has moved the farthest along this track will win. So the way that the game is played, it's basically played over 4 phases each round, and it'll just be a number of rounds until a player gets into that space. So each player is going to be able to play, first of all, a wear card. So the first phase is just picking one of your 2 cards to determine where the players are going to go. So let's just say this player wants to go to the auction hall, and let's say, I'll just randomly place each of these face down. And then once every player has played a card face down, you'll reveal them, and you'll find out where each player is going that turn. So we have these 2 going to the auction hall, and these 2 going to the castle. So now you basically understand which players you're competing with. I should mention that these cards are going to be kept secret from other players, just for the sake of the demonstration. I'm leaving them face forward. So now that every player has played their wear card, each player will select, again in secret, just placing it face down, a what card. And this is just going to determine what action they're going to perform at that location. So let's say this player picks that. And then, so that's the end of that phase. And now we'll resolve the 2 areas. So first the auction hall gets resolved. And so every player who's gone to the auction hall will reveal a card. And as you can see on the top of the auction hall cards, your options are to play either a cash card or a thief card. So first the cash cards get resolved. Every player who played a cash card, and in this case it's only this one player, only these 2 people were at the auction hall, will get to compare values. The person who has the highest value will get to put their card into the cash register and then just claim a card from these 2 that are on display and add it to their hand. So let's just say that player takes that card. If multiple players play cash cards, only the highest value cash card will get to claim an item. Any other cash cards will just go back into players' hands. Then we'll resolve the thief cards. If multiple players played thief cards, only the highest value, or I'm sorry, if multiple players played thief cards, then nobody will get to do anything. The thieves just go back into players' hands. But if only one person played a thief card, that thief card gets to claim a cash card from the top of the cash register. So the player would get this to be able to play in a future round to buy more paintings. So that would be the end of the auction hall phase. So players would return their cards to their hand. And now we would go on to the castle phase. So again, we have these two people who have played castle cards, and you can see on the castle card that your options are to play an exhibit. So basically to display cards that you've collected, to play a thief, which is to try to attempt to steal a card that somebody has put on an exhibit, or to play a detective, which is an attempt to catch a thief that another player has played. So I'm not sure what these people have played. Let's see. This player's played a thief, and this player's played an exhibit. So the way that this is going to work is, let's say this player has these cards, which is not quite possible, but just for the sake of the demonstration. So each player who might have played an exhibit card, in this case there's just one, but each player would decide on a number of cards that they want to exhibit. So this player would want to choose these 4 cards, and they'll simultaneously reveal them, and then they'll compare the length of the exhibits. So this one will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, because they're all consecutive letters, and it's okay if some of the letters repeat. So 1, 2, 3, 4. If other players had played it, an exhibit of equal size, then you would look at who has the oldest item. So here the oldest item would be 1831. If the other player had an item older than 1831, their exhibit would be considered to be better. But in this case, this is the only player who's exhibited. So what's going to happen is that you're going to look at the number on the hex space that player's pawn is on. So you can see here, I hope, maybe over here, that this hex space, for example, has a 3, 2. And those numbers, if you're in either of these spaces, if you have the best exhibit, you'll get to move 3. And if you have the second best exhibit when you're exhibiting, you'll get to move 2. And that's how you'll determine movement based on exhibits. So at the start of the game, it's a 2-1. So this player who exhibited, the blue player, they had the best exhibit, so they would get to move 2 spaces. And that'd be the end of their phase. And then the thief, and if there are multiple thieves, they'll all get to do this based on the rank of the thief. So here we have a rank 2 thief. Just the highest thief goes first. The thief will get to steal one of the cards from this player's exhibit. So this player over here, for example, may have played the thief. They have A, B, D, D. So if they got a C, that would allow them to complete that as a sequence. So they'd have a 5-card sequence. So they'd probably steal the oldest C card and add it to their hand. So that would be how the thief works. And again, multiple thieves, they just are going to get resolved in the number or order. Finally, nobody played it, but had somebody played a detective card, the way that those are going to work is, even if multiple player, as long as one thief has been played, the detective will come into play. So in this case, one thief had been played. What would happen is the thief would still get to steal their item, but then they would go to prison. So the thief, and this is a 4-player game, so you'd only use 4 slots in the prison, would go on the 4 space. And if multiple thieves had gone there, they would also go on those spaces as well. And that card will be locked up until more thieves come here. And after a card gets to the 1 space, then it'll go out. I actually might have that back right. I think they make a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go out. But after the 4 spaces that exist in a 4-player game, your thief will stay there until those spaces fill up, and then it'll get returned back to the player whose color it is. And then every player who's played a detective, as long as at least one thief was played, will get to move. And the way that the movement works is that you are going to look at your relative position, and in a tie, you just consider that all to be the same relative position, and you'll move that many spaces. So the player, let's just say the black player played a detective. They are in first, second space or place, and they'll move then 2 spaces. So 1, 2. So now if let's say this was a situation later, if the green or the red played a detective and was successful in capturing a thief, they would move 3 spaces. So that is basically how the round is going to work. It's going to be those 4 phases resolving in that order every time. And essentially, over the course of the game, players are going to be collecting more and more of these exhibition cards. And like I said, the game will go until one player crosses the line over here. At that point, players will have one last chance to show an exhibition of the cards that they've collected. All players will basically put together the best exhibit that they can. So let's say this player has this one, which is 5. And this player, the best one that they could do over here is BCD 3. The player who puts on the best exhibit will move will move 8 spaces. And then the player who puts on the second best exhibit will move 4 spaces. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 versus 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll look at who's furthest along the track, and that player will be the winner. Okay, so that is Hoity Toity, and this is a game that's over 25 years old, and in that 25 years has been extremely influential on the board gaming hobby since the time it's been released. This simultaneous action selection with this notion of trying to outguess what your opponents are doing is seen in so many games since this game has come out, and this is really the game to have popularized that mechanism. We could think of games such as Witch's Brew or Broom Service. We could think of Libertalia, Citadels, Cash and Guns. The list just goes on of games that really take the mechanism that this game really perfected and set out as a template and have embellished upon it in the future. So this has been, I think, a tremendously influential game. There's no way to underplay that. Also, from a historical perspective, this was, I think, the first real crossover hit insofar as German games. This game was published originally in Germany. That broke out in the USA. This is like a pre-Catan hit for Klaus Teuber, and this was his mega hit before Catan came and just eclipsed it in terms of popularity. But yeah, this was one of the very first games that people were importing en masse in America. And it was one of the first German games, I think, that got picked up and published with an American title in America. So its historical significance is not to be downplayed. At the same time, it has been 25 years since this game has come out, and I think that were this game to come out now, it might be slightly different. The game, it takes about 30 to 45 minutes to play out, and to a certain extent, it does feel like you're just doing the same thing over and over, insofar as each round is going to play out with those 4 same phases, and players are going to have the same decisions in the first round, essentially, as they have in the last round of the game. That does change somewhat based on the fact that over the course of the game, you're going to start to gain knowledge about what people's card collections look like, and you'll start to get some sense of what cards they might be going for in the castle. And from that small bit of information, you'll be able to start to anticipate players' moves. If you know that they need a letter C or a letter A, for example, if they put up a display of B, C, D, E, and then a letter A comes out, they might be going for that. So that would influence what they're going to do, so that would influence what you're going to do, and so on. So this is always like that classic dilemma of, trying to anticipate what your opponent is going to do, but they know that you'll be doing that, so they might change their actions. So that sort of psychology experiment in a game is really just distilled down to almost an essence here. The decision to divide that choice into 2 different parts, where there's going to be half the players going to one area and half the players going to another area, does make this game feel a little bit less chaotic than it might have. But at the same time, the best moments in this game tend to be when players' intentions end up intercepting with each other. Because of that, I would definitely say that this game plays best with more players. It goes up to 6 players, so yeah, with 5 or 6 players, this is definitely a go-to game if you want to have that sort of social experiment. I do think that the game, had it come out now, it might play shorter. It reminds me of contemporary micro games. Some things like Coup, for example, is a game that has a similar feel, but plays in about 15 or 20 minutes. This one, I think, is I wouldn't say it's long in the tooth or anything, but it does play longer than I think this mechanism needs to play to just get your feel for it. So that's not necessarily a criticism. It's just, I think, an older style of game, and that's just something that is to be expected of a game that's, like I said, over 25 years old. It is something that, like I said, though, with 5 or 6 players, it plays very smoothly. You don't need to have any sort of grand strategy to succeed at this game, and you could learn the rules within a few minutes. So it's something that I would still absolutely recommend, and although it's had many imitators ever since it's come out, it still does what it sets out to do in such a pure essence that there's few games that do what it's trying to do better. So those are my thoughts on Hoity Toity, and thank you for watching.